Okay.
That's awful.
Okay, here they are. They're not stirred.
Yeah. Did you get any food? Did they give you something? I'm afraid we really need these calories.
I think you did all right, eh?
Did you get fed?
Welcome back, I'm Kim.
I'm Del.
We are Going the Whole Hog, and you've just been watching our trek through the Garama Mountains in Armenia. If you are thinking about doing a similar hike yourself, or maybe you're planning on walking the Transcaucasian Trail route through the Garamas, or you just fancy doing a 1 or 2 day hike up to Ajdahak and back, we have written up an accompanying blog post over on our website with lots of useful information, which I'm sure you will find helpful. So you can find that up here.
For now, though, we'll just tell you a little bit about our own experience of hiking in the mountains there.
We did this hike at the end of September in 2021, which, in all honesty, was far too late in the season to be setting off for it. We had planned on starting it at least a month earlier, but we'd been in Georgia, we'd had some delays getting our camera repaired and various other things, which meant that, it was mid-September before we got down to Armenia and the end of the month before we could start on this trail. And we had originally intended on hiking the full Transcaucasian Trail route from around about Lechashin, Lake Savan, down to Salim Caravanserai. However, what happened the night before we started, Dan?
The first major snowfall of the season dumped a whole load of snow over the
Yeah.
mountains. So we knew that things might be difficult en route and we wouldn't necessarily be able to complete it all. And in the end, that's what happened. We had to alter our course around about day 4. But we still feel that we got to see a lot of the highlights.
Including Ajdahak.
Including
and Crater
Ajdahak,
Lake.
yeah.
Yeah. So originally we were planning on a 6-day route, but it ended up being a 5-day route, ending at, I don't know how you say it, but Gocht, G-O-G-H-T, somewhere near Gerard Monastery. And we should probably talk about the dogs. So, like many of our hikes in the Caucasus, in Georgia and Armenia, we were accompanied for almost this entire route by 2 trail dogs who we ended up calling Tess and Molly. And they were amazing. I really loved them.
Yeah, I mean, on the first day of our hike, we just turned round at one point and they were trotting along behind us.
And we were a bit apprehensive about that. Normally I'd be extremely excited if I saw a trail dog. But
Very excited, she'd be chatting away, encouraging them. But
I wasn't with these 2 because you do have to be wary of shepherd dogs in the mountains, and normally they are something to be avoided because they're very protective over their flocks and whatnot, but they didn't have any sheep with them, and clearly when they got closer to us we realised they were just puppies and they were nothing to be fearful of.
No.
Instead they were just adorable and ended up being our own little guard dogs, but we definitely thought that they were just going to turn around and go back to wherever they'd come from. They didn't. They ended up sticking with us for the entire time, sleeping outside our tent every night, and yeah, becoming our own little guard dogs. If we heard a bark during the night, we knew that there must have been a wild animal going by or something. That was them. Tess and Molly is what we called them, and yeah, they were our companions. Very good companions for the 5 days.
For our route, we ended up doing 84 kilometres over 5 days, starting in Lachashin at the northern end of Lake Savan and finishing in Gocht,
If that's how you say it.
if that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Regardless of whether you're going to do this similar route to us or a different route, you should know that there is no accommodation in the Garama Mountains. There's also nowhere to get food, and you do have to be completely self-sufficient if you're heading off into these this range. So it is remote, and at the time of year that we were there was really nobody around. I think we met maybe one other person for the bulk of the hike, and that was about it. So you do need to carry camping gear, you need to carry all of the food that you need. For this trip, what we did was actually had some dehydrated meals, which you cannot get anywhere in the Caucasus as far as we've sourced out anyway. So what we actually did was had some fire pot meals, which are our favourite dehydrated meals. They are made in the UK, and we got them sent out via a company called Kiwi Post to Tbilisi, who, yeah, basically you can order stuff in the UK or also in America if you were wanting to get any dehydrated meals from there. And they have like their own flights that they bring them in to Tbilisi on, and it's like a really cheap way of doing it.
It's a
and
very, very reasonable price.
very
Yeah.
convenient. And also there's very limited water. It is a volcanic range, and there's not an awful lot of natural water sources. The lakes are actually the main water sources on this route, so I think the longest stretch that we had to carry water for was day 1 and 2, which was about 30 kilometres. So you do need to be really careful with your planning. You need to have, enough vessels, let's call them, enough water bottles, enough bladders, whatever, to actually carry a large amount of water. And you do need to be careful about water rationing and making sure that you know where you're going to be filling up from, and have something to purify that water. So we were, using a steady pen and making sure it was all safe to drink. We have complete packing lists over on the guide on the website, so you can check that out up here if you want recommendations of what you should take for a hike in the Garamas. We also have 2 very detailed blog posts with all of our like backpacking camping gear, so what tent we use, what mats we use, sleeping bags, cookware, that kind of stuff, and another blog post which has all of the hiking clothes and things like that we use. So if you are interested to know what we were using and what our recommendations are, just check out those blog posts. I think they're linked down in the description below. I probably don't have enough cards left up there to add them in. So maps, that's another thing I wanted to mention. So I know that people like to take a paper map, but basically they just don't exist for the Garama region yet. I know that Cartizan in Armenia are making a whole bunch of hiking maps in conjunction with Transcaucasian Trail and some other organisations there, but there isn't one for the Garama Mountains yet. The only maps that do exist are like some Soviet era maps from 50s maybe, or 60s, or whatever. They're not very handy. You would have to basically print them out yourself, and it's all in Cyrillic, so if you don't read Cyrillic and understand what it means, you're going to struggle. And basically the easiest option is absolutely to be downloading GPX or KML tracks to Maps.me, Gaia GPS, whatever your preferred mapping app is. And ideally, if there's more than one of you, you're going to have multiple phones or devices that can have the GPX tracks on them for navigating. Or if you are planning on doing this by yourself, perhaps you should have more than one phone or more than one device that can have the maps, because if you can't rely on a paper map and a compass and so on, as well as a digital device, it's not ideal. But that's just the reality of hiking in the Garamas, unfortunately. So the main hiking season is July and August. That is when there is also a lot of nomadic herder camps that are active throughout the range. So there's a lot of Yazidi herders who will move up to the Garama range in the summer, and they will be grazing their livestock there and have tented camps. but it was already too late in the season. I think they usually pack up around mid-September, so we didn't see any of that. July and August would definitely be a better time to go hiking there, possibly into early September as well, but late September, yeah, it was definitely a bit too late in the season, I would say, for us. Obviously, we had the snow, it was also extremely cold, although we did not have to worry about electrical storms, which is something you need to be aware of if you're hiking in July and August.
Yeah. I think also our time, the end of September, you're also getting low on daylight hours as well. I mean, not too low, but a lot less than in the middle of the summer, so something else to think about.
Yeah.
And day one, we went from Lachashin to our camp below Mount Cond. It was just over 15 kilometres and an elevation gain of roughly 700 metres. It took us, 6.5 hours?
Yeah.
We estimate it would take about between 4 and 6 hours for the average hiker to cover this distance.
So we took a taxi from Yerevan, from our hostel there. We were staying at Envoy Hostel, which is very good, by the way, and we left sort of anything that we didn't need to be left in storage there, and arranged a taxi through the GG taxi app, which is also very good. So it cost us about 6,700 drams. It was a very reasonable price for a 1 hour taxi journey.
Yeah.
And it managed to drop us just at sort of the end of the road, and we didn't have to walk on any road through town or anything like that. Day one was a pretty straightforward start to the hike in terms of the terrain. The weather was not really on our side. It was extremely windy, and obviously that makes it much colder, so it was a biting wind. But yeah, it was fairly straightforward. We're just climbing up on sort of 4x4 tracks. There are quite a lot of tracks that like crisscross all over the Grama Mountains. So we were checking our phone, like GPS on the phone every now and again whenever we reached a fork, just to make sure we were staying on track. But yeah, pretty straightforward day. Nice scenery, just sort of climbing a little bit higher and higher, and like I said, the wind was pretty extreme, but we were expecting that.
We were expecting that. We were not expecting the camera to take a tumble at one point, which is what happened. Was slightly doubtful about setting it up at that particular occasion because the wind was just coming across. We kind of walked on, and I was fearful about it. Turned round and saw the camera, and the tripod was just lying on its side. So I dumped my bag and sprinted back, and just felt absolutely gutted at that stage, thinking what's gonna happen to the camera. When I first looked at it, I'm like, there's no way that's gonna be working anymore.
I thought I was going to cry.
I did actually feel like crying at that stage, but it did still work. Were we down to one channel then? I can't remember. I think maybe just one channel instead of two, but it was working, which we were amazed at, and then we just carried on.
But we were starting to think, is this number two? Number one, we've woken up and there's been a whole load of snow. Number two, this just happened. Should we just be turning right now? Is this a bad sign? But because it was working, we carried on. And I think it was not long after that, the dogs joined us. And we got to our camp for the night. And it was really blown a hoolie, like absolutely raging wind. And trying to get the tent up was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, it was quite difficult.
And then I went to zip the fly up on the tent, and it completely just burst. I could not get it to shut.
I forgot it was you that broke the zip.
Yeah, it was me. It wasn't me that broke the tent. Like, clearly it was having some stress issues, and I just happened to be the one with the zip in my hand at that moment down.
Was I not making some dinner or boiling the water, and you came round and told me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you knocked over a precious 1 litre of water. We were water rationing. We had to carry 10 litres of water, 30 kilometres, water rationing. And this one takes his eye off the ball and drops a litre of water.
I spilled 1 litre of water. You broke the tent.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Which is
doesn't sound like a...
It's actually still an issue. We've just heard back from Big Agnes in America, where our tent has been for months now, trying to get repaired. And they said it was unrepairable.
Yeah.
That's how bad the damage was. But anyway, so basically... the wind is absolutely howling, it is freezing cold, and poor Del is trying to fix the zipper on the tent. We were expecting snow that night, we knew the wind was not going to let up, we knew there was going to be snow, and we knew that there was absolutely no way we could go to sleep in that tent without the fly zipping up properly and us having some shelter. I think it took you like over an hour with the penknife. He had to unstitch the fly to try and get the zipper back on. It just wasn't happening.
When I couldn't connect the zip, 2 bits of the zip back together at the bottom, I basically had to use 5 or 6 big safety pins to stick it together, and the rest of the zip just held it in place. But then we could never use that particular entrance again, and we haven't ever since.
At this point, again, we're like, is this the third thing? You know, they say bad luck always comes in threes. We're like, is this our sign that we should actually just be turning around right now? The dogs were like, you know, outside with us. They didn't seem to mind. They've got a nice warm coat.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, if we can make it through the night and the tent survives, we'll keep going. But if not, we know that we do just need to pack up and head back down before we get into deeper trouble. And it did survive. And it has kept on surviving. You clearly did a very good repair job. Anyway, so day 2.
We went from our camp below Mount Cond to Achnaleach or Achna Lake. It was nearly 16 kilometres. We had an elevation gain of around 500 and loss of around 150. It took us about 7 hours all in. We estimate it would take about 4 to 6 hours to hike the distance yourself.
So as predicted, it snowed during the night and we woke up with some snow around the tent. The tent did survive, however, it held up and we were filled with a little bit more confidence about the trip ahead. So packed up, hid behind some rocks for a very windy breakfast and just continued along the sort of 4x4 tracks for most of this day, or all of this day basically. So yeah, navigating again was fairly straightforward. I mean, it's pretty open terrain. You've got these sort of amazing volcanic peaks around you, different colours, some red hued ones, some with dark scree slopes and stuff. And we had nice little views opening up as well. So we caught sight of Lake Savan and Mount Aragat and also Mount Ararat as well, the big one and the wee one. And yeah, I just remember it being so bitterly cold when we stopped at that little church, which was a crazy location, this little church and this little cemetery just in the middle of nowhere in the mountains.
Yeah, I think we were there.
Big picnic table.
Yeah, I think we were there mid to late morning and the sun was shining, but I think I had a bit of a signal at that stage and checked and it said the temperature was like 1 or 2 degrees.
Yeah.
So even though the sun was shining, it was cold.
I remember my hand was just like freezing trying to cut that cheese. And yeah, so day 2 was a bit snowy for us. We were going through the snow, but it was really, really beautiful. And descending down to Achnaleach or Achna Lake was, yeah, really amazing. That is very, very impressive. And we found a nice little camp spot, but we were really conscious, I guess the time of year, like with limited daylight hours, we were very conscious that we wanted to get set up camp and ideally have our dinner and just be ready for bed before the sun went down. Knowing us too and how slow we are with all the filming and that, like that generally didn't happen, but that was what we were aiming for.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that really meant that we wanted to be at camp by 5 o'clock, which yeah, for us isn't always easy. So when we got there, it was kind of a mad rush, get the dinner and all this, but there's 4x4 tracks that lead to the lake and it's quite a popular picnic spot for especially like groups of guys, I think.
Hunters and stuff like that.
So there were a bunch of guys there that were like at a picnic table nearby. So if you heard some music and were like, where was that coming from? It wasn't us just blasting out the tunes, it was them. So you took one for the team and like went over and had the obligatory vodka shots and
Yeah.
had some food. They
Had
fed
some
the dogs.
meat, had some cheese, had some bread,
Yeah.
had a shot.
So anyway, they eventually left. The dogs came back. They'd had a little bit of a feed, which was good. I think some more people showed up later on.
When we were already in the tent.
Yeah, I heard some more ruckus. But yeah, so if you are going to camp there, it's a beautiful spot. But yeah, just beware that you probably have some groups of people coming and going, and you won't necessarily have a peaceful night. That's for sure.
One of the guys did ask if I wanted to fire his rifle. I just said no, thank you. Day 3 was Achnaleach to Baddyleach via Ajdahak. If you haven't guessed already, Leach means lake in Armenian. And Ajdahak is the highest point of the Garama range. The distance that day was around 16 kilometres and our elevation gain and loss was about 600 metres up and 600 metres down. It took us a total of 8.5 hours, but we reckon that the average hiking time would be between 5 and 7 hours for this distance.
So this day was undoubtedly the highlight for us. Ajdahak is probably the highlight for most people when they're hiking through the Garamas. It has the big crater lake in it and it's just a very distinctive peak. And yeah, today did not disappoint. It was a real highlight from start to end. So we left the lake behind and we also left the 4x4 tracks behind and we were basically just on trail or just navigating across open terrain for the whole of today. Went past a couple of really nice lakes after leaving Achnaleach and then we were like climbing up, going through more snowy bits, and then we stopped for a little picnic lunch with a fantastic view of the north face of Ajdahak. It wasn't quite the view that I was expecting. Everything I'd seen of the Garamas is like really green grass and then these very striking like red rocky slopes of these volcanic peaks. But because everything was covered in snow, it was basically just white for us. So I was actually a little bit disappointed about that, although the snow did look amazing. But yeah, I feel like we kind of missed out on some of the classic Geirama views. But anyway, the hike itself was still amazing. So we had that little picnic, and then we sort of went down through some rocky terrain, and then we started climbing up to Ajdahak itself, where you actually, the official TCT route just goes to the saddle. On amazing views from there. We could see Ararat again, didn't we? Had amazing views of that. Yeah, snowy bits everywhere.
Yeah, you can also see to where you're going in the coming days. So
yeah.
Great Spitaxer, Little Spitaxer, you can see them in the kind of landscape ahead of you. But anyway, from the saddle, we went up to see the Crater Lake.
Yeah, so we just left our bags because we knew we had to go back there. It was, again, crazy windy up there. So that is about, I think it was about 3,550 metres or something up at the crater rim. So, I mean, you can walk around the rim. You could even walk down into where the lake is and so on. But, I mean, most of it was covered in snow and it was extremely windy. And we were always on a bit of time budget.
Under some time pressure.
Yeah, you know what I mean. A little bit of a freaky moment when we left the saddle because it was like quite a steep slope and it was completely covered in snow. I didn't really like that, but you went and tested out a route first, didn't you? And then I just like followed your footprints. We descended to Badi Leach, which means Duck Lake, and that was a really beautiful spot. It's about 1 kilometre off like the official TCT route, but definitely a good place to aim to camp that night. A really, really beautiful spot. Again, arrived as the sun had already left, so it was a very cold night.
Day 4 was Badi Leach to Vank Lake. It was 24 kilometres and we had about 450 metres to climb and about 800 metres to descend. Took us 8 hours all in, but we reckon this distance would be covered between 5 and 8 hours by the average hiker.
So day 4 did not turn out as we had planned. We'd intended on walking to a point beyond Little Spitaxer that day and camping there, but yeah, plans had to change. We thought that the most difficult bit was behind us because we'd already been over Ajdahak, which was the highest point in the range, but little did we know that the northern flanks of Little Spitaxer would be covered in snow and we would not want to go up there. So the day started off as we planned. We sort of retraced our steps back to the main route, climbed up past Greater Spitaxer. Amazing views there, and the formations and all the weird rock colours and stuff was really cool there. And then we were looking ahead and we could see Little Spitaxer when we stopped to have our lunch, and suddenly we realised, oh hang on, there's a lot of snow there and that's exactly where we're headed. A big debate ensued, didn't it? We had the camera out so we could just like zoom in and try and get a better idea of what the terrain was like, what the snowfall was like. You know, I'm reading and rereading the TCT trail notes for the trail description. I'm looking at the contours on the mapping apps and just trying to figure out, okay, where exactly are we going? And, you know, zooming in and thinking, this looks crazy. Like, that does not look like something that we want to get involved with. So we kind of made the decision, okay, let's call it quits here. And then we had sort of a weight off our shoulders, but then we had that feeling of, oh, sometimes when you're looking from a distance, it's worse than it really is up close. We've experienced that a lot before, so we're just going to regret it if we leave now without actually going closer and checking it out. I think we went an extra 4 Ks to the foot of Little Spitaxer, and we're looking up at it going, actually, yeah, no. It looked way too deep snow, way too icy for us. Like, we didn't have crampons or anything. We have very little experience walking in winter conditions like that. The last experience in Kyrgyzstan, going over deep snowy passes, is not an experience I ever want to repeat. So yes, at that point we decided, no, we've checked it out, but we're definitely comfortable with saying no thank you. We're going to exit here, thanks. So at that point, again, it's like wasting so much time looking at all the apps, looking at the routes, trying to figure out, right, where do we go now? We need an emergency evacuation plan. Nah, it wasn't quite that bad. But like literally there's 4x4 tracks going everywhere. So, and we have did have then these really ancient like iPhone 6s that had zero storage. Maps.me would take like 4 hours just to load up if you're trying to like figure out point A to point B. Honestly, it was just so slow and painstaking, and you're doing all of this in like the wind and the cold, and yeah, in the end,
I mean, it was actually quite pleasant that afternoon. It was a nice sunny afternoon. And
maybe for you, I had my fingers out, my digits were getting cold
my
down.
hands don't get cold like
Yeah,
yours do.
yours don't. Mine go numb. Anyway, so
To be fair, I was just going to say, to be fair, we were spoilt for choice. It wasn't like we were stuck about where we were going to go. We're like, do we go to the west, down to Lake Savan, or do we go to the east towards Yerevan? Was it the other way around? I always get those mixed up.
I never eat ready to eat, mate. Anyway, we decided that descending closer to Yerevan made more sense than descending on the Savan side, just for transport links back. So, did my little wizardry on Maps.me and Gaia and all the rest of it, and decided, okay, let's head for Vank Lake, and then we can camp there tonight and head off down to the main road the day after. So that's what we did, and it ended up being one of the longest days I've ever had. Well, up until that point, 24 kilometres. We had that big descent and my feet were just killing me by the time we got in. Me and Tess, we were just like hobbling into camp. The dogs just sort of collapsed outside the tent once we got there.
It was a bit of a slog, and coming away from Little Spitaxter, we had to kind of like go up and down quite a lot. It wasn't like bad terrain, but it was a bit undulating, and we were kind of going back in the same direction that we'd come from, just slightly on a diagonal. So that was a little bit dispiriting. But
we did an extra 8Ks basically by going to check out the route closer instead of just calling it quits after lunch and saying, no, let's descend from here.
But anyway,
we got there and we just sort of camped close to Vank Lake, which is actually a reservoir which like feeds water down into the towns and stuff like that. And we were camping on the opposite side of Vank Lake to where all the petroglyphs are and the dragon stones and stuff, which we have written a bit about in the guide on the website. So, you know, were we to do this again with all of the information that we needed beforehand, we probably would have gone a slightly different way if we were going to be descending that way. And I do write about that route in the blog post and put a little map and stuff so you can follow that. So you can go and see some amazing like 5,000-year-old petroglyphs, but as it turned out, we didn't see any of that. So, yeah. Day 5?
So on day 5, we went from Vank Lake to Gocht. It was about 13 kilometres and we descended over 1,000 metres. It took us 5 hours altogether. We estimate it would take about 3 to 4 hours if you were hiking this yourself.
So yeah, it was mostly just descending on 4x4 tracks today, quite a big descent, so it was getting hotter and hotter and hotter as we got down to the bottom. We also met quite a few more like nomadic herders who were still at their camps because it was lower elevation, so the weather hadn't quite turned yet. So yeah, we saw some more like flocks of sheep and some other dogs, and Tess and Molly were like rah, 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 making sure that kept their distance from us, which was quite nice actually. Yeah. And then yeah, we sort of just above the main road, when we were looking down over the canyon, it was like such a beautiful view. We were looking down over Gerard Monastery, which is like quite a big deal, but we didn't quite realise that at the time. We did end up going back to visit that monastery a few months later at the end of our trip. But yeah, it ended up being quite a nice place to end the trip. There's quite a few sort of interesting tourist sites and landscapes and stuff around there. So we got down into the village and just went straight for the village shop and bought the dogs 2 massive chunks of meat, which they absolutely scoffed down. And then we tried to figure out how to get back to Yerevan, sort of hung around waiting for a bus for a bit, tried to find a taxi. In the end, a taxi came from Yerevan for us through the GG app, and yeah, said our very sad goodbyes to Tess and Molly. Not that they were caring, they were basically just having a little nap under the tree. But yeah.
If you're interested in the filming side of things, we shot this on our Sony a7 III with the 24-70 f2.8 lens. We have the Rode Video Mic Pro on top to record our sound. And we also have the travel tripod from Peak Design, which in most situations handles things really, really well. It's not their fault that we set it up in high winds and the camera blew over. our drone, at that time we had the Mavic Air. We've since upgraded to the Air 2S, which is a fantastic upgrade. But the Mavic Air handled pretty well for us for a good few years. So that was the footage that we had in this video.
We use Epidemic Sound for all of our music on the video. And there's a link down below if you want to check it out as well. You'll get a couple of free months trial periods. I really like Epidemic Sound because you can choose individual stems of each song. And on these kind of videos, like these kind of silent hiking style videos, I rarely want to use the full mix of a track because there's too much going on. I quite like to just use either the instrumental stem or the melody stem because it tends to be a bit more stripped back and quiet and just suits the mood better. So I have used Artlist in the past, but it's one reason I really like Epidemic Sound. So if you are looking for music for your own videos, I would recommend checking them out. And if you click the link down below, yeah, like I said, you'll get 2 months free trial. And maybe we get like an extra month or something. I don't know. It does benefit us in some way, so it's appreciated if you do use that, if you're going to try it anyway. We edit in Adobe Premiere Pro and anything else. That's about it. If you have enjoyed watching this video, but you would like to see the sort of less polished version of it, and as it was really going down at the time, thoughts and feelings, do go and check out our Instagram highlights and the Girama Mountains trek, along with all the other treks that we did in the Coxes, are saved in the highlights there, so you can see the true reactions and a lot of dog action.
You can see the full range of Kim emotion.
Yeah, a lot more
through the highs and the lows.
Yeah, so go and check that out. I will pop our handle down here. I mean, it's easy to remember. It's just that going the whole hog. So you can pop on there. So thank you very much for watching, and a very special thank you to our patrons.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, if you enjoy what we do, if you've enjoyed this video, which I'm guessing that maybe you did if you're still watching right now, you can help us to continue creating this kind of thing by liking, by commenting, by subscribing to this channel. All of that shows YouTube that we are doing something that people like. They will show our stuff to even more people who are interested in this kind of thing and help us grow in that way. And if you really, really like what we do, like these videos and the helpful guides and all of that stuff, please do consider becoming one of our patrons. We have recently set it up. We are offering a few different perks for a few different sort of pledge levels, and yeah, I'll link it up here. You can go and read what we offer, read a bit more about the stuff that we do and our goals in life in general, for where we would like to see this channel going and the blog going. And yeah, if you like what we do, that would be amazing if you could help us to continue creating this kind of thing in the future. Anyway, cheers.
Cheers. And for what's coming next as well?
Oh yeah, so this was not the only hike that we did in Armenia. In fact, we spent 3 months hiking there, and we have way more to share with you. You might be a bit confused actually why our last video was from Scotland, West Highland Way, and now it's in Armenia. Like, we are not in Armenia right now. We are filming this right now back in Scotland.
Yeah.
What you see on our channel is not always in chronological order. We kind of jump around a little bit just depending on when we have had time to sit down and do the edits and write up all the blog posts and all of that. You know, it can take 2 or 3 weeks just to edit one film and do the accompanying guide for it. So
yeah, what else we've been working on, or what's been in the backlog of stuff that we've had to deal with from before. So
always a backlog of stuff. So yeah, we basically spent 3 months in Armenia from sort of mid-September till mid-December 2021. Most of that was hiking, and also some road tripping around in a very funky Lada Niva. So yeah, we have still got all of those adventures to share with you on this channel, and they will be coming up sometime soon. Not necessarily next, because we also just went on a very exciting trip to the Outer Hebrides in Scotland and St Kilda, which was amazing. And we are going to be working on those videos next and some guides for there, and then kind of jumping back to Armenia and whatnot. So basically it's a bit of a roller coaster on this video channel here.
For you and us.
Yeah, exactly. But there will be more hiking videos, there will be more kind of just chilled out, I don't know, travel-y videos or whatever you want to call them, I don't know. But yeah, they'll be coming up at some point. We hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching right to the end here. Do stick around for the Dell comedy montage, often my favourite part of the whole film. Cheerio.
See ya.